Okay, so I know I promised no more poetry, so technically this is not a poem. Um, One last video for today. This was like a little short story because on top of singing and writing poetry, I also write stories. And this is one of the very few short stories that was actually short that I've written. So I take that as an accomplishment. This one, if you have listened to my other video, Hero, when I was reading my poem Hero, or if you listened to Delicious Pain, or a few of my other ones, and you didn't like the content in it, like it was a little bit too disturbing for you, this one's really jacked up. So don't listen to it then. Just switch to another video, maybe one of the other assorted videos, where I have a few more happy poems on there. This one is just, whoa. I was really upset. Can't remember what upset me, but I was really upset, and this is what came out. What inspired me a lot was when I went to go see Macbeth, our school production of Macbeth for extra credit actually, and I did not know what it was about until I went and I watched it, and at one of the parts, one of the characters, can't remember his name, he finds out that Macbeth has slaughtered his family, like his wife and his children and everything. He's really upset. And so as the actor was pacing back and forth and he was spewing all these lines, like all these Shakespearean lines, I'm like, wow, that's really deep. You know, what if I wrote a story, or like a little short story, about a guy who lost his children, you know, they were killed, and he's standing there staring at them as they're lying there dead. And so I'm like, oh, well, that'd be pretty cool. So one day, probably should have been doing my homework, but I didn't. I was writing this depressing piece. So here it is. It's called Dreaming Angels. They lay there, unmoving, arms out, hands open, as if they had been waiting for the gift of death. My tears are real and sorrowful as I gaze into their empty eyes, take in the lack of life in their expressions. All of them are gone. Not one survived. No breath stirs the motes of dust in the air but mine. Hemma's lips are still, but tinged with pink as though she had been out kissing the roses again before she fell to the floor, her body lifeless. This house still screams with the sound of their cries, and when I hear them, it brings me to my knees, in front of my boy, my little Lucas. His hair is colored red like the fingertips of one hand, like he had touched himself, distantly curious when his palm came away wet with his own blood. His face is turned towards me, and his hand is outstretched, and I realize with a new wave of despair that he had been reaching for Hemma's, and she had been reaching out in return. I look up to find Timmy Lee, the eldest, and my beautiful son, hanging by his neck from the rafters. He has been lynched. His blood is dripping thickly onto the floor, as if it was reluctantly leaving his veins. I stand on shaky legs and stumble to where he hangs. The light breeze blowing in through the open window and door make him swing from side to side, and the rafters creak gently with the shifting of his weight, filling the empty house with a lonely, single sound. I force myself to look upon him, to gather my fill and still take in more of the gruesome sight. His skin has been peeled away, and it had not been done by his own doing. The little skin that is left bears the telltale marks of bruising. He had fought death away, and only to be strung up by his neck in the end, and hung from the beams like a pig that hangs by the hooves of a tree. Oh, by the hooves from a tree, prepared to be slaughtered. With a leaden heart, I cut him down from his perch, and cradle him in my arms, his blood smearing across my chest, and leaking onto my hands. Still, I clutch him tighter. I lay him down with his brother and sister, and close their eyes as to pretend they are sleeping. Little Lucas, lying on his stomach, a gory hole ripped through his back, my baby Hemma on her side, the long matted hair sticky with her own blood, and that of her brother's, the high collar of her dress nearly obscuring the thick gash across her throat. And Timmy Lee, resting peacefully on his back, the thick hangman's noose tied about his neck, and the pattern of rope engraved into his skin. The wind begins to howl, and my tears fall and mix with the dirt and blood beneath me on the floor. With the care of a father trying not to wake his children, I ease down beside them, my body the length of the three of theirs. My hands, still stained with all that is left of the life of my children, go up to cradle my head as they had Timmy Lee to my chest. I fall into a deep sleep beside my dreaming angels. So, talk about ferged up. Yeah. Don't really know what goes through my head sometimes. I just come up with this stuff off the top of my head. Just thinking, well, wouldn't that be cool if, and then when I get to it, I write it down. So that was one of my short stories named Dreaming Angels. Tell me what you think. For those who are into like the darker side of life and like all that gruesome stuff, or the disturbing stuff, the psychological thrillers and everything, comment. For those who don't, if you were impressed or curious about it or whatever, comment, post your comments. Nothing mean, of course. And have a good rest of your night. Bye.